What's up everybody out there? Welcome back to another Addicted Fishing tutorial. My name is Jordan Knigge and today we're talking about my #1 favorite way to catch any species of fish, and it's with a spinner. So if you guys want to learn more about how to catch salmon, steelhead, or trout on spinners, stay tuned. It's coming at you right now.
Oh, there he is, got him! Got him! Look at that one bigger.
First and foremost, this is a very versatile method of fishing. You can use these spinners on any kind of rod for any species. Again, whether we're talking salmon, trout, steelhead, even bass will eat them in a lot of places of the country. But really, it's the most versatile way of being effective and covering a lot of water and getting in front of those fish and giving a very aggressive presentation that they're going to want to chase down and eat. So to start it off today, we're going to start talking about the rod. There's two different options that you can use for this, either a bait casting setup or a spinning setup. Length of rod doesn't necessarily matter. I like a little bit longer rod for this if I'm going to be on the bank, because it allows you a little more reach and it is a little bit better for your line management. You can keep your line up and off the water or down and in the water if need be, depending on what kind of water that you're fishing. The other option would be some sort of a spinning reel setup, and this is just an Okuma X twitching rod. This is an Okuma X 993 bait caster rod, but either one's going to work just fine. This works good as well, the shorter 7.5 foot rod, as well as that 9.5 foot rod. It just depends on what situation you're fishing. Today we're fishing a really slow, stagnant moving river, so we're just using small rods, making nice accurate casts. We don't need that long setup because we're not stuck on the bank, we're on the boat. So both of those will work great. I like to have a 30-pound braided line on this setup because it cuts through the water nice. It gets that spinner down and it doesn't get a lot of drag from the current. So using that 30-pound tough line down to a bumper as well is a big part of what I like to do. I have a little blood knot here tied with a 25-pound test today, but normally you can go anywhere from 10 all the way to 25-pound test. Connect it with any sort of uni knot or bumper knot, which you can find down here in the link in the description of Addicted Fishing. We have all kinds of tutorials for you guys showing you how to tie these uni knots. So what I have here now on the end of this is my spinner. This one here is what we call Michael Jackson color. We have a little hoochie on here. We're fishing for coho salmon today up here in Washington. So we add these little hoochie tails to the end of these spinners just to give it that little bit more action. But if you're fishing for trout or you're fishing for salmon, it's not necessary. But there's little tricks and stuff that you can do like this to add that little bit more action to your rod. But I'm gonna sit down here and I'm gonna go over a little bit of the spinner selection that we have. All right, so what I have here in my lap is basically the plethora, the box from heaven of spinners here. And you see my main point that I'm gonna make right out of the gate is having a lot of different colors. Every color works for salmon and steelhead. I'll never say that one color is always gonna work better than the other, but it's really good to have that full color spectrum. You see we have our pinks and reds, we have our chartreuse, we have our blues, we have our all the way down and some greens, some different colors. Some of them have painted tips. But having a good variety of all that different color sequence, and also having spinners that range in size from 3 all the way up to size 5 or 6 is very important. It's going to allow you to be versatile and use those different presentations on fish that you know are there, because some days, especially with salmon, they're going to choose a certain particular color and really key in on that, giving the light color, giving the water color, or just giving the condition or the timing of the run. So having that good variety of different sizes, weights, and colors of spinners is going to be mandatory to being a really effective spinner fisherman out here. You don't have to spend a ton of money, but go out and get a variety of colors. Don't buy all the same spinner, and definitely don't buy all the same size. Be unique in what you have in your box. All right, so now what we're gonna do, we're actually gonna grab the rod. We're gonna float down the river here. We got a boat full of guys and we're all chucking spinners right now. We're out here salmon fishing in Washington today, and it's very obvious already that the spinner bite is much better than anything else. So we've all switched to spinners. We all have hoochies on them, but I'm gonna show you the technique and the style with all 3 of us or 4 of us in the boat here of how you want to effectively present these spinners for salmon in particular. But again, this works for any sort of species of fish. So the two differences in between fishing these spinners is 1 if you're from the boat, or 2 if you're from the bank. The method's gonna be a little bit different. So what I'm gonna talk about here is fishing from the boat, and it's gonna kind of roll over into bank fishing, but some of the methods are gonna be a little bit different on how you let it sink and how long you're fishing this spinner through the strike zone. So we're floating down the river like this right now. We have a nice bank on this side, it drops straight off, and really the nicest part about spinners is there's nothing that is only spinner water. Spinners work in any sort of water that you'll find fish in. So stagnant, slow, fast, rapids, deep, shallow. It can work in all, it just depends on how you're gonna present it. So what we're doing here, we're slowly just going down with the current. And what I wanna do is identify structure and good spots where these fish are gonna be and cast 45 degrees upriver and let that spinner work vertically down the bank rather than laterally back and forth to me. I want that spinner to fish through that strike zone as long as possible. And what I mean by that is as I cast out here, I'm not casting and then retrieving straight back in at a great speed. I'm letting that spinner blade start. I'm engaging that blade just to where I start to feel the thump. I'm keeping my tip low and pointed right at the spinner and slowly retrieving that thing all the way back to me so that it's down in the strike zone and spinning for the greatest length of time possible. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna keep that spinner blade in front of those fish and it's gonna keep aggravating them. The biggest thing with spinners in my eyes is these fish aren't necessarily eating them because they're super hungry. It's more so because this is a big flashy piece of metal, and if I did this in your face and you were sitting here in front of me, what are you gonna do? You're gonna swat at it with your hand. Obviously fish don't have hands, so they're gonna use their mouths to swat or chase that thing down and kill it. So letting it sit in front of them for the longest period of time is always gonna piss them off a little bit more. So as we're going down here, I'm gonna keep casting at 45 degrees. I'm gonna keep my tip low once again. And the reason I'm keeping my tip low is you can see how, I don't know if you guys can see that spinner out there, but it's sinking while I'm reeling here. If I lift my tip up, it's gonna come to the surface while I reel. That spinner's gonna go any direction that you point your rod tip. So you point it up, you point it down, it's gonna go that direction. If you point it left, you point it right, it's gonna do the same. I like to try to keep a direct point of contact in with that spinner the whole time so that I have the greatest amount of sensitivity, one, to detect a bite, but even more importantly, is two, to detect bottom. So what's gonna change the most in between being in the boat or being on the bank is the direction of your casting. When we're in the boat like this, we're gonna accentuate our upriver cast a little bit more because we have the ability to fish it all the way down in the current along the bank and as far as we can back to the boat. If you're on the bank, you need to more pinpoint that spot that you're fishing. You need to cast to point A and fish to point B and bring it in. You're not always fishing all the way through the strike zone. So if you're on the bank, you wanna make sure to work your 45s, casting upriver at 45, and fishing your spinner all the way down to 45 and possibly even swinging into the bank. But using that 45-degree angle, one, is going to allow you to sink down enough to get in the strike zone, and two, it's going to allow you to get that good presentation and that down and away presentation to where that fish only has to close his fins, turn over to the bait, and grab that spinner. And that's what's most important, is again keeping it in front of those fish. So if you're in the boat, you're going to cast upriver a little bit more so that you get a longer drift, but if you're on the bank, you're going to cast more at 90 degrees or 45 degrees so that you're not sinking too quickly and landing that spinner on bottom and ultimately snagging it. The next thing I'll stress about fishing these spinners is probably the most important part, and it goes into how you're retrieving it and what kind of current you're fishing, but it's the speed that blade is spinning. If you're fishing for salmon, I like to see a little bit more of just a steady blade speed, nice steady speed coming back, slower repetitions, not necessarily thumping really hard and even throwing off any kind of wake off of that spinner. You want that spinner blade spinning just fast enough to keep that tempo. If I'm fishing for some sort of trout or steelhead, I honestly don't mind it just loping. And what I mean by that is that spinner blade floating through the strike zone, doing this slow lope, because what happens is you see as this spins fast, it puts off less light than if it spins slow. So every time the sun hits that spinner blade as it spins slow, you get a bigger flash, where if it's spinning super fast, you're not getting as much light sequence coming off of that spinner blade as you would if it was going at that slow loping speed, which makes a big reason why we reel faster or reel slower depending on what kind of water that we're fishing. If it's fast water, you reel less. If it's slow water, you're gonna reel more. But being able to feel the sensitivity of that spinner blade and feel that thump is what's key in fishing this properly. Got him, nice.
That's a nice fish there. Excellent net job by Ryan, just by the way. Excellent net job.
Just touch on that. Way to go, brother.
Knuckle bumps.
Oh, man. What a nice fish. Oh, there he is. Got him. Got him. Ooh, that one's bigger. Well, you saw, everybody, the effectiveness of those spinners. Doesn't matter the color. We're fishing two completely different colors here, but getting them in front of those fish, getting that correct blade speed, and keeping that thing down in the strike zone will get those fish to bite every single time.
When you say, Jordan, the most important is the blade speed, I would say.
Yep.
The retrieval speed of what what water you're fishing. Nice work there, Jordan. Yeah, that's what it's all about.
The spinner bite is on today. Well, as you see, guys, the effectiveness of these spinners is unparalleled. Keeping them down in the strike zone, switching those colors, and keeping that aggressive presentation in front of those fish will get you more bites when nothing else is working. All right, everybody, well, we appreciate you tuning into this tutorial today. If you guys want any more of this content, go down here and drop a comment below, drop a thumbs up. If you have any questions about spinner fishing or anything like that, drop a comment below. We'll be sure to get back to you. Like I said before, drop that thumbs up, and if you haven't already, go down here, hit subscribe, and hit that little bell notification so that you can see when these awesome tutorials are coming out every day. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. You stay fishy, and we'll see you out there.